Hi guys, this is my first video in my series Surviving F1 and it is about surviving your first night shift. Most new doctors I talk to are often very apprehensive about starting nights, and if this is you, stay tuned as I discuss my top 10 tips for a successful and happy night shift. So first of all, my first tip is get some rest. And this may seem a very simple tip and very obvious, but sometimes it can be missed. So before you start your first night shift, say for instance if you're starting it at 9 p.m, it's important that you sleep the day before. So you could sleep, I would advise, to early afternoon or take mini naps throughout the day. And this will make such a big difference when you go on your night shift, as you're more alert and more productive and more ready to deal with the events that happen on night shifts. My second tip is to pay close attention at handover. So when you begin your night shift, you will go into a room and the day team will hand over new patients that they have clerked in, new admissions, and patients that were unwell and patients that they think have a possibility of becoming unwell overnight. So it's useful to take notes and jot down bits of information about these patients so that you have a brief idea of what's going on with them before you are bleeped about them. You may be bleeped about them later on or you may not, but it's good to have an idea about these patients before you're bleeped. Also, handover is a good time to exchange bleep numbers with your SHO and to introduce yourself, as your SHO is the person you will be contacting if you run into difficulty on your night shift. My third tip is to do a thorough assessment of patients. Night shifts differ from day shifts in that you will be called to clinically unwell patients, whereas in the day shifts you will more be dealing with routine tasks such as discharge labs, taking bloods, putting in cannulas. And at night shift you will be called to people who are unwell, who have developed chest pain, become breathless, things like that. And it's important to do a thorough assessment of these patients, to do a full ABCDE assessment, decide whether they need bloods, ABG, chest x-ray, troponins, etc. And only then I would advise contact the SHO. If you just jump in and contact your SHO without doing a full assessment or doing any investigations, your SHO may become frustrated because they're busy, or it may reduce time and can slow things up in the assessment of the patient. They might say, go do an ABG and call me back, or book a chest x-ray, have a look at it, call me back, listen to the chest, call me back. So you don't want that. You want your full information being given to the SHO when you call them. And you will be surprised the amount of information you can get from a good ABCD assessment, and basic investigations can tell you a lot about how unwell the patient is. So I would advise being thorough before you're contacting your SHO. My fourth tip is to be organised. On a night shift you often have to carry more than one bleep. You may have your stethoscope, tourniquet, notes from handover. So it's a good idea to have everything organised, to make sure you have your bleeps on you at all times, because if you're missing bleeps it's not good practice. Those could be very unwell patients, and it's always important to answer your bleep as soon as you can. And my fifth tip is about sleep. Some people sleep on their night shifts and others do not. I personally rest rather than sleep on my night shift, but everyone needs a break on their night shift, and it's important to take your breaks and to rest, because you'll be more productive after resting or sleeping. Sometimes there may be a time where you're not getting a lot of sleep, so people use this opportunity to sleep for an hour or two. That's fine, it's up to you. It can be useful to sleep. You may feel energized after it. I personally tend not to sleep on night shifts, but everyone is different. My sixth tip is get to grips with practical skills. On night shifts, especially in the morning time, you are asked for a lot of cannulas, and people cannulas tissue overnight. They need IV fluids. So if you're not very practically orientated or struggling with cannulas, bloods, ABGs, I would work on those before night shifts. My seventh tip is don't be afraid to ask for help. You won't be reprimanded ever for asking for help, but you may be reprimanded if you don't ask for help and are struggling or out of your depth. Someone will say to you, well, why didn't you call the SHO? Why didn't you call someone? And if you're not sure of what to do, it is always better to ask than to do something you're not sure about. And no one will be mad with you for asking for help. You're new and you need support. My eighth tip is to always document. So when you assess someone, you should document everything clearly in the patient's notes. Sometimes on the ward, doctors come to assess patients and the nurses check the notes and they say they haven't written anything down. So don't be that person. Always document what you do. Next, I would say be aware of common problems that may arise on nights, such as chest pain, breathlessness. You may be asked to deal with falls, so work on doing an effective fall assessment. Sedation, often patients can get very agitated and nurses will beep you asking for sedation for patients. And verification of deaths on night shifts. Generally in the early hours you can get called about death verifications, so it's good to have a clear idea about how to do all those things. My final tip is to do a good handover in the morning when you're passing information on. If there's someone unwell that needs followed up during the day team, that needs a senior review, you need to pass that on to the day team so that everyone's tuned in to the patient's well-being and continuity of care. So it's important to hand over any patients that have been unwell to the day team, just so that they are aware of what is going on. So that concludes my video on my top 10 tips to survive your first night shift. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel.